last episode of my Forester truck conversion, I finished up the exterior portion of the sheet metal work on the cab. In this episode, I'm going to work on the bed sides, as well as the taillight area, and converting the hatch into a tailgate. Stay tuned. So before I even cut the back off of the Forester, I did some test movement to see what the tailgate articulation would look like. But the best way to see what it's going to look like and how it's going to feel is to do a rough cut and just test it out. So the tailgate's on, but it didn't fit well, so we're going to talk about that a little bit later.
Alright, so I made this cap here. I'm going to cap off the bed rail for this guy. Before I get too deep in that though, what I want to do is kind of internally weld some of these seams, just to make sure that we keep as much structure as possible. The reason that these have their strength is because they're kind of pinch welded together here, and I cut that pinch weld off, so I'm just going to internally weld some of this stuff. Alright, so you can see I got my piece laid out here, and it's intentionally inset, so it's not like on top of the sheet metal, but I can see all the edges, so I'll be able to weld those to this plate. There's a couple spots I'll have to fill in, but I just wanted to make sure that there was one continuous piece, so I can just fill these in as I go. Alright, so I bought these generic like tailgate hinges, and I really would like to use these. The tricky part is that I need to get my hinge point about right here for everything to work. And if we're just swinging in and out, I still think I'll probably have to cut a portion of this plastic liner to get it to actually swing. I think that's doable and acceptable to me though. I just want it to look stock from the outside but actually hinge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some exploratory cutting. I'm going to be making my own bottom tray, so I'm not really terribly worried about cutting the structure out of this, just because I'll be adding stuff back.
So at this point, I realized how difficult this was going to be with a simple hinge. So I looked for something else, but I couldn't find any alternatives I liked, so I decided I was going to make this work.
So I couldn't find any kind of special kind of hinge, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this area right here, just cut it all away, and hopefully there's enough room, I can make enough room. Anyway, so hopefully that we can make it so that this guy swings out underneath and then it doesn't hit the surface. We'll make that level surface our new platform height. But for right now, yeah, I'm gonna do some cutting. So the first thing I'm actually gonna do is remove the tail lights, because I don't want to get those all kind of like, you know, metal particle-y melted nonsense. So take those out and then I'll just, you know, start cutting. So I tacked together some really crude looking hinges, but I'm still catching when I swing. And I think that's because I'm too far up still. I have to cut the bottom of the bracket that mounts to the truck, and that way get down lower and closer to this pivot surface right here, and hopefully that gets me clear so that I can swing this tailgate out. Alright, so I finally got this able to swing like a tailgate, but there are a number of problems. For one, it's, you know, my hand width, so probably about 4 inches up, which is way too high. Because of the way the middle kind of bows out, I am gonna have to cut a little bit off, I found out, so that's just gonna happen. And I'm gonna try to put the hinge mechanism as close to the bottom edge, or I guess the new bottom edge, as possible. It's actually pretty close. Swing.
So I stared at this for a while, and I realized the only way I was going to do this without totally reinventing the wheel was put the hinges on the outside of the tailgate. Unfortunately, that's going to be obvious and not going to look very stock, but I mean, it's a functional, kind of interesting look. So there was a ton of just trial and error when making this truck. You know, I cut metal away, add metal back, and you know, it's just part of the process.
So the camera battery is super low, but I just wanted to show the success. This is just mocked in here. Tomorrow I'll finish it up, but since I put the hinges on the outside, that means I'm going to be able to get this tucked down pretty low. So I'll be able to tack on some of the metal that I cut out, because it actually rises up slightly when it raises down, when it lowers down, and that way I don't even have to clearance out the bumper area. It just clears it naturally because of that raise up. Then I'll put a piece right here that is flush with the top of this, extend this out, clean up all the edges, and I'll have me a tailgate. This is super functional. Really stoked. So last night I came up with a solution with the hinges on the outside. So that's all good. Now I just have to figure out the order in which I'm going to build the actual hinges. So this will be the style of hinge. I want the hinges to be removable, just because I like to be able to work on stuff, you know, separately if I need to grind or fix that. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reinforce the area I cut out with the one inch square tube. Now I'm going to take this off. I think a 1/4 inch flat plate, you know, add a little dimensionality to it, I think will work really well for this situation.
Here I'm bending up some of the sheet metal edges I cut away so that I can weld the sheet metal edges together and have a strong anchor point in the unibody that I can weld my bed tray to. So for the tray structure, I'm using a 1 inch, 16th inch wall square tubing, which is my go-to for light duty stuff like this. So So like I said in the last video, I kind of want to work with what the Forester already has. So I want to make sure that my structure fits with the sheet metal and welds to the strong points. To accomplish that here, I'm kind of sectioning my 1-inch tube and then welding it back in with a little bit of a notch for the spare tire area. So to make my hinge brackets removable, I'm using 2 riv nuts and a hole in the body of the car that will mate to a peg on the bracket to create another shear point. So if one of the bolts loosens over time, the bracket will still remain in place. Here I'm welding in the additional shear point on the hinge bracket. Alright, so I got this guy clearanced out for the brackets, and I'm going to pop in the taillights to kind of get everything just mocked up. Right now it's resting on these guys right here. So once everything is mocked up and I got all the gaps around the taillights I want, then I can go ahead and weld these hinges in place. I like the way the serviceable hinges came out, so now I just had to clean things up. These are the removable versions of the tailgate hinge I came up with. I got these originally from a 2005 Silverado, just replacement hinges, and modified them to bolt into the Subaru. As I mentioned in the last video, I'm really using the Forester to make this truck, and the body lines already exist. So here I'm cutting the pinch weld off and then re-welding the pieces of metal together where the bottom of the window opening was. As I move into where the tail lights and the tailgate interact, it does get a little bit more interesting as far as the decisions on how the body lines are going to end up. So you can see that my body lines are looking pretty darn good. So what I did to achieve that is I kind of got the tailgate set where I wanted it, fit up the tail light, and inside here I welded this piece of metal to offset it, just the perfect gap, so that way I can take out the tailgate, or I can take out the tail light and trim the back, to get that nice look I'm looking for in the end. Then we'll add a piece of metal that goes across so it's the same level, and get a real nice looking bed without damaging our taillight. So the new piece of sheet metal you see me splice in here is from the upper portion of the window that was cut off of the Forester. One of the things that's really cool about having a scrap metal pile is that oftentimes I will find shapes that are already bent in the way that I need to use them, and it just saves time making custom parts. One disadvantage of using Forster sheet metal for this is that it's just very thin, so it's very easy to warp by putting too much heat when welding. So I bent this tailgate piece to make sure that when it's in its resting position, it matches the curve of this tailgate. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make this piece, because this portion is going to be part of the truck, and it's going to get cut straight for the tailgate. So there'll be like a gap vertically right here, and then there'll be kind of an overhang. The main reason I decided to make the overhang permanent over the taillight was because that sharp extended piece on the corner of the tailgate would have just been a safety hazard, and reshaping the metal to fit better for my application just worked out really well. So here what I'm doing is welding on little pieces of metal as spacers, because I have to fill in where the trim panel used to be on the hatch to cap off the top of the tailgate. So that's pretty much what it's going to look like, minus tailgate and a few other bits. Got to clean up and make the tray still, but I'm pretty pleased with the way everything's turning out. So one of the considerations when you're making a truck bed conversion like this is water management. You can see in here it rained last night, so water's kind of pooling in there. I want to have some simple drain holes, so I kind of looked underneath the car, and there's like sections of sheet metal sandwiched together, and I don't want water to just drain into those. And there's like a pinch weld right here that kind of houses all of those sections. So this is the closest to this dip area
that I can go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill a hole right here. These rubber boots are nice to protect, the sheet metal from chafing this electrical connection. So what I'm going to do is drill my drain hole right here, which just goes straight to the ground. And then kind of where it dips down on the edge, I'm going to weld a piece of metal that kind of just guides the water directly to this hole. And then I'll use some seam sealer so that water can't get past that area.
Yeah, so this is one of the things that was not planned for well on this build, and I'm definitely going to come back and fix it, but this was my first attempt, so I would say don't use this drainage method, but I am going to show you how I did it the first time. Alright, so this is the inside structure where the window kind of meets the old hatch, which is now the back of the cab. And so right now you can see it's not very well boxed in. I did weld on the inside and the outside of the outer skin, but now I'm going to take some of the inside structure that I cut away, and so I can sandwich it in here so it's a really nice rigid box section. You can see that, now this area is totally boxed in, like it's got some section to it on both sides. So now I'm gonna have to build some of the platform for this guy. You can see I welded on this piece in the middle here between the two strut towers. I also welded a front crossbar that'll be integrated into the back of the cab, and those two pieces will be the foundation for the tray support for the bed. Between all these crossbars, I'm going to make a lattice structure to house the tray, and then I'll cut out this kind of strut support that's welded in there just to keep the rigidity as is. I think it should be pretty strong. Obviously, the further up I went with the tray, the more it would support those two strut towers being away from each other. So you can kind of see I welded the sheet metal on the top of the strut towers as well. This is an extra precaution. Here I'm filling in the corners of the cab. Now this is one of the places I should have spent more time with the metalwork because this is an interior corner and it's just hard to work on. Hard to sand, hard to kind of paint, do a lot of finish work on. So once the main back wall was welded in, I set about welding in the front portion of the bed tray that was going to be fixed in place. Next it was time to start working on the structure beneath the bed tray, and I designed this so that the bed panels could be removed for servicing and things like removing the spare tire. So being able to use the spare tire in this rig was super important to me. So here I'm mocking up the tubes to see where I need to weld in the supports for my tray so I can still use the spare tire. Alright, so I got some mock-up flat spots here. That's just so I can make sure that everything keeps on the same plane. But I also got these guys right here. I welded up this 90, and these guys are going to sit like so. So that way, when I put my platform on, or the tray, I will have something to screw down to, right in here. And I did the same thing for the other side. And we got some X braces for the middle. go like right here. So that will kind of triangulate this whole thing. And then once I get those in, I will also weld in a cross brace, you know, from here to here as well. Alright, so there's my structure. You can see I got the nice triangulation going on up front and out back. Out back you got some kind of areas for the tray to sit. Spare tire goes in and out. So yeah, now I'm just going to cut that strut tower support out. I'll leave the camera on and see we can see if anything kind of buckles. Here's beforehand. When I was mocking up the tailgate and exactly how the reveal sits for these taillights, I welded on this kind of metal spacer to keep the spacing correct. But for long term, what I'm going to do is I have these TPU bumpers that I printed. You can see when I put my light in here, there's a space right here where the old bumper was. And I just need to kind of file this down to fine tune it so that the tailgate stops right where the bumper used to stop. I actually want it to go a little bit past, so when I put my tailgate latches on, it will kind of compress this and make sure that the tailgate doesn't rattle around. Alright, so when you look at that, there's a little bit of a gap. So when you apply pressure, it's going to compress a little bit, so I think that's a pretty good place to start. I can cut that guy off. Alright guys, that's where I'm going to end this one. I know it's a little long. I'm actually kind of burnt out in editing, so I'm sorry this video took a lot longer than I had hoped. But yeah, if anybody in the Denver area actually is interested in editing, yeah, reach out to me in the comments of the video. I'm really hoping to find somebody who has a passion for filmmaking and kind of shooting car-related content, and maybe somebody to, you know, make fun of my crazy ideas on camera and just kind of get some more personality into the channel. Because I want to spend more time working on stuff and less time editing. But on that note, guys, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. On the next episode, I plan on kind of doing more kind of body work to smooth this guy out. Just continuing what's on the screen right now. Either that, or it might just be kind of a slice of life video on the finished truck, because like I said, I'm getting sick of doing kind of boring editing work, even though I think this project is super cool. So let me know what you want to see. I might not do it, but yeah, I appreciate the feedback. So appreciate you watching. Until next time.